You're listening to the I Love You Keep Going podcast with George Haas. For more information, please visit our website at www.mettagroup.org. That's www.mettagroup.org.
So welcome everybody. This is I Love You Keep Going. It's Thursday, January 30th, 2025 at 7:38 p.m. Pacific time. And tonight what I thought I'd talk about is the point of developing a secure base from which to explore from. And what actually a secure base means in this regard. This applies, of course, to primary exploration as well as secondary exploration, and also to the spiritual journey that you might find yourself on. One of the things about meditation, of course, is that if you go deeply into it, the goal then is classical enlightenment. And classical enlightenment means that you actually are able to experience the human condition the way that it is, and what that actually entails and what you discover. And then, of course, the effect that that point of view has on you and how you relate to the world as a result of it. But primary exploration can extend beyond spiritual pursuits. I know when I first came around the Theravada world and began to sit Vipassana, there were all sorts of metaphors about the nature of liberation and the nature of the extraordinary rarity of attaining a human life, and then that you would hear the teachings even more extraordinary. And one of the metaphors they use is that it was as if a life ring were floating in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, and just randomly you're a sea turtle and you poke your head up inside the life ring with no sense that there's a life ring floating there or that you might poke your head up at. That level of rarity, which I appreciated. When we were in Myanmar, they have the tallest standing Buddha in Southeast Asia, in Myanmar, up in the north. And it's 31 stories tall, which reflects each of the different levels of attainment. And normally what you do is you take the elevator to the 31st floor, and then you descend down the stairways, going through all of the different layers until you come to the human realm, and below the human realm is the animal realm, and below the animal realm are the hell realms. And the quality of the illustrations and the sculpture, which is, as my friend Bruce Dow would say, there's high art and there's low art. This is low art. Very folksy and cement and whatnot. I love the aesthetic myself. But on the particular day that we were there, the elevator was broken. And so we thought we would walk up. Actually, that was a better way to ascend through the different realms. But, it's the tropics. It's hot. It's humid. And being inside of a giant cement Buddha was quite an intense physical experience. And so we started ascending through the hell realms. I was quite entertained by the depiction of the demons. In particular, there was one that I thought was hilarious, which was this a depiction of meat eaters and actually, or people who eat animals. And it was a giant frying pan with a huge fire underneath it. and little humans were trussed up like chickens and frying in the heat of the giant frying pan. And up we went. It was an arduous, long journey up until we finally hit the human realm. So the five realms of hell, the animal realm, and then finally we ascend to the human realm. And we were so exhausted, we decided that that was enough for this lifetime and descended down again. Christian.
Or just sounds more like the practice of the seagull erupting out of the six-pack holder.
Yes, even rarer. What was the motivation that got you to come to practice meditation? And then um, uh, I think I probably laughed for 2 years when I figured this out, but I came because I wanted to be enlightened. And so when I went to my first Vipassana meditation class, and we all sat in a circle, and the teacher dutifully asked each of us why you wanted to come to the meditation class. And one of the plagues of my life is a kind of constant naivete in terms of points of view. And so when it became my turn, I said, I wanted to be enlightened, and everyone laughed. But it wasn't that laughter that you really want to evoke in people. It felt quite humiliating that one would uh, consider that one could become enlightened in this lifetime. And it is one of the gripes of more traditional Asian cultures, is that because reincarnation is so steeped in the way that they view things, that there's no urgency for it. And whereas in the West, where we're really steeped in this idea of the single life and then the judgment of heaven and hell at the end of it, we feel more pressure. Christian?
Is that, do you think that view is because, like, there's some kind of fear of superstition in Western Buddhism, or is that not something that you would run into in Myanmar if you expressed your desire to become enlightened?
In Myanmar, it is such a profound expression of bad manners to describe any attainment that you've reached that no monastic would do it. They would simply not hear the question, really. And of course, there's all of the mutterings behind everybody's back, which is what attainments they have. And the word that I heard mostly was inscrutable, that the level of their practice has taken them to a point of inscrutability. And this was one of the interesting things about this, is to discover what it is that enlightenment actually means, so you can tell whether somebody's attained it or hasn't attained it. Because if you don't know what it is, nor have attained much in your own practice, then being able to tell whether somebody's legitimately attained a particular state or not is hard to do. I think that in this particular case, the reason that it evoked the kind of unpleasant laughter that it did was because nobody in that particular community had much of a deep practice. And so it wasn't something that was a part of the culture of that group. And I bounced around from group to group because I had this conviction that enlightenment meant that you would have no more problems in life. And I'd already had my fill of problems in life. And I wanted a place where that didn't happen anymore. And I could finally sort of piece together something that seemed manageable. And And it wasn't until I encountered Shinzen and his admonishment to really go for enlightenment, at least stream entry in this lifetime, not something that would happen 10,000 lifetimes from now. And so he was also somebody who could support a deeper practice. And really, the other thing was that it was quite ordinary in his community for people to have the experience of stream entry in that classical Theravada sense. That stream entry, of course, is not necessarily what other traditions would consider enlightenment, and so it's also the culture of the group, and also the culture of the tradition. We might say simply that to be enlightened means that you understand what the enlightened view is, and you're able to sustain the view all of the time, without the vicissitudes of life knocking you off balance. Conditioning is hard to address. It's, if for instance, these fantastic monastic stories of the Buddha describing enlightenment to a group of monks, and then they're all enlightened from the description of it. I've never met a teacher who was so skilled that could do that. And really, in sitting in the practice and beginning to observe the nature of the human condition, you begin to see that we don't really operate in the way that things are. We don't really address things in a equanimous calculation of what's happening. We really exist in these threads of meaning that we create. So you have the capacity to sense the objects that can be detected. When there's contact, you have consciousness of the sensing experience. So you're gathering these little snapshots of sensing experience. In the West, of course, Aristotle suggested that we do a survey of everything that's in front of us, and then we create internally a working model of what's out there. And because the sense capacity is pretty neutral, we create an accurate representation of what's happening. And then we operate from that accurate representation. And because everybody's doing the same thing, everybody's creating an accurate model of what's happening, we're all operating on the same premise, which allows us to assign intention and meaning to the actions that other people take. In the attachment world, of course, we would call that a non-mentalizing psychic equivalent mode, where you think that your experience is universal and that everybody's having it, so that you're entitled to assign meaning to other people's actions. In the Buddhist view, you gather this highly curated selection of what is interesting to you, so from a preference list, really. And then you take in the sense data, you evaluate it for urgency. Does it need immediate attention? Does it not matter? Is there time for something pleasant? And then it's mapped onto the perceptual database, which is this record of meaning that we've assigned to things in our life. And if there's a close enough match, not only is there a meaning assigned, but it's a whole thread of meaning that goes all the way back to the first time we've really assigned that kind of meaning. And if the present moment represents something that's that you've identified over and over again, it's a very rich, long thread of meaning that's attached to the experience of the present moment, which also includes the way that we've responded to it over and over again, which includes our expectation of the outcome of a response to it over and over again. One of the reasons why people who have trauma tend to not resist being re-traumatized is because in the way that they assign meaning to it, it becomes a traumatic moment of the past, and because there was no solution to it other than enduring it, they don't respond in a way that might prevent it. They just simply move into a mode of endurance. So sitting into this, the nature of the human condition and the nature of the mind, very early on in the Theravada map is the understanding of the sense of self as the witnessing of what's happening, not the author or the doer or the creator, and separating the self-experience from the experience of awareness. Awareness is the knowing what's happening, and the self-experience is this identification of this is who I am, this is what's happening, which awareness knows. So inside the container of awareness is the activity of self. And the way that we do that in meditation, of course, is we sit in meditation and we instruct the mind not to do anything, not to focus on anything, not to create, and identify and assign meaning to sensory experience. And then what you notice is that the mind does it anyway. And actually you have no control over whether it does it or it doesn't do it. And you have the witness of the self being completely powerless in all of that. And so you begin to understand the nature of self, and how then you can begin to understand the nature of identification with the self-experience. And then you can begin to understand the disidentification with the self-experience and let that arise and pass like any other sense experiences. You begin to understand the nature of duality. Duality being, this is the self and the world is out there and they're separate. But actually, in a unitive sense, they're all the same sensing experience. So if you're in awareness, of course, you're watching the self-experience come and go with all of the other sense experiences as a sense experience, not as something separate and distinct and traceable, trackable. One of the things that happens quite early in meditation, I think, for a lot of people, is that when you turn the attention on your own experience, a lot of the experience is difficult to hold, difficult to manage. The way that we habitually focus away from things, the way that we habitually assign meaning to things, the meaning that the sense of identification with ourselves, all of these things can, for some people, be quite afflictive, and to turn the attention toward them creates these experiences of difficulty. And I noticed, certainly true of me and many people who I started this practice with, the main way to regulate the experience of that was by stopping meditating. So you meditate, and it's relieving and astonishing, and then you're confronted by the conditioning and the way that you hold the world and the views that you have, and if they're painful and unpleasant, and you can't regulate the emotional experience of them, the solution is to stop meditating. This is particularly true when the practice is only Vipassana. Since we started teaching Metta Vipassana, this integrated practice of heart and mind, if you will, or heart and insight, that difficulty doesn't arise so much. And really the solution to the Vipassana side, or the insight side, heating up, is to withdraw from that, but not through not meditating anymore, but by withdrawing into the heart practice. into that safe container of kindness. But that in itself will have limits, which is why the idea of developing a group of people that are emotionally regulating to you and also will understand the intimate experience that you're going through in practice. And this, of course, applies to any primary exploration, or even in secondary exploration, it can be useful. The secure base was the frame that John Bowlby came up with in devising attachment theory. What was observed, of course, is not everybody gets a secure base. A lot of people just have a base, which is not particularly secure and often not that helpful. The base from which you explore. The secure base, of course, is this place that you can come rushing back to when you're emotionally dysregulated and you need help regulating, so that you can re-regulate efficiently and quickly. And then a group of people that then push you back out into the world so that you can continue exploring. In meditation practice, of course, what you're going to need are other people who practice so that they can understand what you're talking about. And if you have other kinds of primary exploration, what you need are people who can talk about the experience of it. One of the things about meditation practice is as you advance down the path, the ability to talk about it in a meaningful way to people who do not practice becomes harder and harder to until you get to a place where they really don't understand much what it is that you're talking about or how you are experiencing things. Of course, we don't want to completely isolate ourselves from people who don't have the expertise that we do, mainly because we become too isolated. It's too lonely to do that. We want to be able to retain a way of relating, to pretty much anybody. I had my first ride in a Waymo, which is the driverless cab. I don't know if you've ever taken one. Normally, I'll take a cab or I'll take a Uber or a Lyft, something like that. And I didn't realize when I got the Waymo that they don't drive on the freeway. I was in Santa Monica and I wanted to come home, which is in near downtown, so it was an hour-long ride. And by the end of it, I was quite lonely, sitting by myself in the back of a car. I'm sure soon there'll be an app on the Waymo where you can chat with the cab, but I tend to enjoy the chit-chat with the drivers, whoever they are, and what goes on. The perspectives are so different than I normally encounter. And that openness and that ease of just really relating to the people around you is a skill that you want to be able to cultivate so that you move through the world and the world has the experience of safety. And the rarer your point of view is, the more unusual it is to find somebody who can relate to it at the same level that you are. And so we have to keep this openness intentionally. Christian?
Yeah, I would never get in a car that didn't have someone I could yell at.
I didn't try, but maybe you could have rolled down the window and yelled at the car across from you. So then, what is this secure base? Why do you need it? The secure base are people that are able to emotionally regulate you when you're dysregulated and who are interested in in your life and in your narrative and in the 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 development of your life over time, and they become, in some sense, the repository of your history. Human beings are really poor at self-reflection, and so what they also do is reflect back to you their experience of you, so that you have a way of understanding how you are in the world. You want people that are really good at emotionally regulating you. And the reason why that's essential is because if you don't have people around you that can emotionally regulate you when you can't regulate yourself, you begin to limit the amount of risk you take in getting emotionally dysregulated, right? And so if you want to take big risks in exploration to the point that you would be dysregulated, if you don't have that secure base to come rushing back to and get emotionally re-regulated by them, then you have to rely on other sources of regulation, mostly auto-regulation, which is quite slow and limited and very resource intensive. So that distracts or diminishes the capacity to explore. And if you find that the risk taking would be such that you couldn't reliably auto-regulate the distress, then what you would do instead is limit the risk taking, limit the exploration, so you didn't end up in that state. So what you want in your secure base are people that are really good at regulating you, who are interested and delighted in your experience, so that when you come back, you can express the experience of your exploration. What makes that really synergistic is when your exploration is closely enough aligned with their exploration, they can benefit from your exploration in terms of how they might explore themselves without having to do all of the exploration that you do. So there's an economy to that. And then, of course, it's reciprocal, so that you would have to then be interested and listen to their discoveries, and where that would be synergistic is if you could also benefit from the discoveries that they're making, so that you don't have to do all of the exploration. You can learn from other people. Learning, of course, requires epistemic trust. Epistemic trust means you believe somebody is telling you the truth, and you believe the reason that they're telling you what they're telling you is to benefit you, which is the thing that opens up the door for learning from them. And they would have to have that in you. So then, how many people in this secure base do you need? And this is then also the supporting of the quality of your exploration. How risky is your exploration, and how dysregulating is it, so that you don't overburden somebody with too much dysregulation, so that it becomes something that they're not so willing to collaborate with you on. So then you need to have more than one or two or three. Robin Dunbar's research on this showed that the range of regulators in a secure base for most people was between 2 and 5. So that would be a small number, right? People that you see or take care of on a weekly or every other week basis, at least monthly, that are good regulators, that are interested in your exploration and keep up with it, so that they're above the line in the sense that you tell them everything. Who is that? Who can you trust to tell everything? And everything, of course, means you're able to express completely your experience of the present moment without the abandonment terror that can arise in that expression, preventing you from doing it, not so much that it's completely without fear or completely without question, but that the sense of abandonment, terror that arises when you think if you tell somebody something that they'll abandon you, doesn't prevent you from telling them. And actually, the closer and the more secure they are, the less of a bump that abandonment terror creates. Dunbar in his research found that that was uncommon, that the most common way that adults manage relationships is a relationship. So one primary relationship. That's somebody you see daily or every other day, take care of in person. No Bs, so no close intimates, no real closees either, just a group of friends, casual or more casual friends that you see and socialize with, but aren't necessarily intimate. But that placed an extraordinary burden on the one person that you're open and honest with, because they're tasked with all of your emotional regulation. And you're tasked with all of their emotional regulation. And so that if you wanted to separate from them and go to explore something that had real meaning to you, you would have to leave them. So they would have no regulator. And then you would have no regulator until you came back to them. But if they wanted to go off and explore, you would be without a regulator. And so what that tends to do is limit people's exploration. You can't separate, or you combine explorations into one kind of exploration, or one person abandons their exploration and partakes vicariously in the other person's exploration. But that the happiest people are the ones that have both. They want an A relationship, and B relationships. And if you have an A relationship, you give permission to at least one B, so that you can have a reflection of what's going on in the primary relationship. Relationships can get quite distorted if only the people who are participating in them have the experience of them, and there isn't some outside reflection of what's happening. So how do you balance this? All of this effort to maintain these relationships, time, energy, and resources to maintain the relationship and preserve enough for the exploration. In meditation, it was always the question of retreat practice, in particular, how do you gather the time, energy, and resources to go practice? The easiest solution to that, of course, was that you pick somebody who also practices, so they see the value of it and they understand it. And often they can go with you when you go on retreat, so it's a shared experience, even though the practice is individual. It makes sense to them. The allocation of resources makes sense. But what if you partner with somebody, or you come to the practice after you've created a relationship and they're not so interested in meditation as a particular form of exploration? Then what we notice is that if they see the value of it for you and they support you doing it, you'll be able to allocate time, energy, and resources in order to do it. And if they don't, your practice is going to drop off. In particular, the retreat practice is going to drop off. And the other thing that can happen, of course, is if you decide to have kids. We used to call it the meditation trough. Active, intense practice, birth of child, complete drop-off of practice, trench until the kids are off into school or off to college even sometimes. and then the practice, the possibility of practice returns. So it's the organization of all of that that matters. The thing about meditation practice that I value so much, of course, is that it opens up the possibility of really understanding the nature of the human condition, so that when it comes time to prioritize where the time, energy, and resources go uh, outside of the practice, that it really can be adequately channeled into the things that have real meaning. This again bumps us up against cultural assignment of meaning. In the broad sense of culture, what's valuable, and then in the individual societies that one gathered together form the main culture, what the local values are. Christian?
Don't you think you could keep a practice going by just using the baby's crying as the object of meditation?
um, uh, I would recommend, if that were the case, that you do a lot of noting feeling states technique, so that you can come into a compassionate experience of a child. They're lovely children. Not all of us had the experience of that, but I think of them when I see them and watch them encountering the world. It's quite a lovely experience. My friend has a new baby, and I don't encounter the baby enough that I've gotten out of stranger danger. Do you know the stranger danger? So where we're at now is they look over at me and I wave at them, and then they smile and they look away. But if I make any gesture to come closer to them, they immediately cry. So it's a long distance relationship at the moment. 10 feet. Christian.
I have friends who have kids that are 2 and 4, and the 4-year-old took me about 3 years until the stranger danger went away. It's more like a week, which is really kind of insulting. But the power of propaganda worked on the 2-year-old, because the 2-year-old saw that the 4-year-old trusted me. So it only took 2 years.
Right. Right. Well, that's what they rely on, people they trust for that information. Are you safe or not? So, yeah. But it's, if you watch a young child encountering the world, and that innocence is fully there, and that wonder at everything is fully there. It's a marvelous thing. And then see if you can touch into yourself and discover what of your natural innocence is left uncorrupted, and what of your natural wonder is left uncorrupted, and see if you can center into that and inhabit it. It's quite a marvelous state to be in. So then this is an experimentation, and in each of these primary explorations that you get into, and this is of course true of secondary exploration, you go to these places of business or whatever that, however it is that you gather time, energy, and resources, and align yourself with people who can regulate you, and people who can be supportive to you in that environment, and who it is that you can support in that environment, so that in each of these environments you go to, you encounter a sense of safety, a sense of security, which allows that exploration piece to happen. It's that toggle between the attachment system going off and the exploration system shutting down that requires then coming into emotional balance and a sense of safety, so the attachment system can deactivate and the exploration system can activate so you can actually solve the problems. It's just as important in secondary exploration where you have to really be able to function, but then in the primary stuff where you're really pursuing meaning, to develop that secure base in each of these things so that the people that you need to be able to share in a meaningful way your exploration are available to you and that they're willing to share with you, which really reduces the resources necessary to discover things because they can just tell you from their own exploration. In meditation, of course, there's books and books and books about it, but really to have a dialogue with somebody who can help you understand the nature of the exploration is so useful. And finding somebody who talks about it in a way that is direct and doesn't require a lot of transliteration. One of the things I find about the monastic texts is they're written in another time and in different cultures, and so there's so much transliteration. It's sometimes the meanings are obscured, and so finding somebody, you don't need to find somebody who's so far ahead that you don't know what they're talking about, but just far enough ahead that they can tell you which way to go is really useful. So with that, why don't we do some practice? All right, let go of the meditation. How's that? So this weekend I'm not teaching anything, but the following weekend we're beginning a series called Meditation and Addiction, we'll go over the modules of our addiction course. So if addiction is an issue and you're interested in that, come ahead. And we will be beginning a meditation and addiction level 2, which is so the meditation and addiction level 1 is 3 Saturdays from 9 to 1, and the meditation and addiction level 2 is 12 weeks. It meets Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 6 to 7 Pacific time for an hour, and actually does provide quite a lot of support to examine the aspects of addiction as an attachment disturbance. I think it's really a useful perspective on it. So if that's of interest, take a look at that. I offer the teaching freely, and I hope that you enjoy the practice. But if you are resourced and able to make a donation, I really appreciate that. It helps support me and also the work Mettagroup is doing. There's links on the website for that. All the stuff that's coming up this year we have on the website, so take a look at what that is. We're going to start a level 2 meditation and attachment in February as well. Thanks for your practice, and we'll see you soon. Bye.